right, welcome into another Auburn Live show. Appreciate everybody for joining us. I am Justin Hokanson from auburnlive.com, part of the On3 Sports Network. If you're not a part of auburnlive.com, go subscribe now. We're running a 50% off deal, I think through signing day, maybe. So just for a week, few days, I'm not sure. But pretty good timing. We were already going to do it. And then Auburn football decided that they haven't had an eventful enough offseason. And so they wanted to change that. So a lot of stuff going on auburnlive.com. Go check it out. All right, let's jump into it with my special guest. You know him, you love him. Memes, Auburn Memes, whatever you want to call him. Look at him with his Tiger hat back.
Always got to have the hat back.
Man,
and the
total personality going on. All right, let's just jump into it. We'll talk football first, and then we'll get into a little bit of basketball. Let's just jump right into it. Austin Davis, Auburn's offensive coordinator that they hired on December 18th, is now officially resigned on January 31st. So don't know what to make of this. I mean, I do and I don't. I mean, it's just a wild situation. You don't see it often. Actually, what's interesting is Tracy Rocker did something similar last year where he was coming on board and then immediately got another job in the NFL. This is different. From everything we understand, Austin Davis, he got to Auburn, did a little recruiting, was on campus, and then over the last week was gone. And just took some time off, basically. And then released some quotes on Monday. Auburn released an official statement saying that he's out. Essentially, Austin Davis says it was a personal decision, 100% personal. He wants to spend time with his family after the grind at the NFL. And I think he jumped back into college and thought, go back to the South, coach young kids, being around a college atmosphere. But I think that he got into it in the recruiting grind and demands. And I think maybe there's just going to be more than he thought. And he made a quick decision that maybe he needs to just take a step back. Maybe he goes to the NFL, but just take a step back, maybe not get into college anyway. So just kind of a wild decision. I give Austin Davis some credit. It's not easy to jump into what he did and then immediately decide maybe I made the wrong decision and cut the cord. That's not an easy decision. I don't think everybody's got their own opinion. From what I understand, I don't know how you really put this on Brian Harsin. He hired the guy, was excited about the job, and then he just decides this isn't what he's supposed to be doing. I don't know how, if you're Brian Harsin, you're supposed to have known that. I just don't. Maybe there's more details in there that we don't know, but I'm not sure how much you can lay at the feet of Brian Harsin in this. And so it is what it is. We reported on Auburn Live that I think the first choice would be to just promote Eric Kiesau to offensive coordinator. What a rise for that guy, right? Becomes receivers coach and offensive coordinator within the year. And then go hire a quarterback coach. If that's not the direction they go, we'll see. If Kiesau still is reluctant to take the OC job, then we'll see what happens. But it's just another thing, Memes, on this, with Brian Harsin since he's been hired. I mean, once he hires a new offensive coordinator, that will be technically the third offensive coordinator, and he's now had two defensive coordinators. So he's got 5 coordinators before he coaches his second season. And he's got 6 wins.
Well, it's wild that
we throw in some of the assistants. So it's just another thing to throw on there, man. Is this another red flag for you? Like, what's just kind of your immediate reaction?
Well, we thought it was bad with Gus with coordinator turnovers, and now here we are with almost a reality TV show drama in the making. So I don't know if some spinoff of Hard Knocks or somebody needs to get down to Auburn with a video camera, because I think they could they'd be onto something with what's happening here. The knee-jerk gut reaction to this is definitely not good. And I was one of the people who, I'll self-admittedly say, I raised the red flag very prematurely with the Cornelius Williams stepping back, fired, release, gone away situation. Because being from an over-the-mountain guy, I remember Cornelius Williams playing high school in Hoover, followed his career from there. And I thought that was going to be a home run hit. Just, if nothing else, his connections and the recruiting kind of young and up and rising star. And that didn't work out. And it just felt like that was the first domino of now many progressively larger ones. And we could see it coaching. It's very clearly that coordinator turnover is never good, whether it be with assistants or obviously the guys at the top and especially the coach. So I think the real question here that you're sort of hitting at and that we're all wondering is how much of this is on Harsin, how much of this is on Auburn, and how much of this is just terrible luck that just really couldn't have been foreseen. Because when a player comes in, we know that guys will commit and they'll sign and they'll get in the spring and they don't even make it through summer for this reason, that, or another. And you can't really put a lot of blame on that in certain situations on the coaches. So that's really what we kind of have to wonder. And unfortunately, there's a lot of coordinators to look at. You look at what happened to Easton. He's, he went to Clemson, and yeah, it was his alma mater, so we can kind of write that one off. Still scratching our heads and wondering what's going on with Derek Mason. I've had some basketball swag, and I had to wear the football jersey today because we got some football talk. So I was hoping the most exciting football news we were going to have over the last few days was Brian Harsin chunking some chicken biscuits at the basketball game again. Unfortunately, that's not it. And I was also hoping, okay, maybe the worst thing I ought to think about is the debate of what did Derek Mason do. So I do tend to lean with you. I just don't see how this could be foreseen. I don't really see how he could be in Auburn long enough to be some type of clash of personalities or things like that. So there seemed to be a lot of hype and attention and excitement from him, his former players, and of course the staff, obviously things that Pete Carroll said from the Seattle side. So I just don't see how this could have been just some type of melting pot waiting to explode. I do want to lean to just the fact of it had to have been some type of just personal issues of the stress, because sometimes you do new things and you just realize pretty immediately like, hey, this isn't going to work out. I'm hoping and chalking it up. Obviously, this is still developing, so we don't know that this is just horrendous luck. And I mean, I think it's really going to test Brian Harsin's leadership to see how he is going to end up handling this. Because we can remember even when the Tuberville days that, and I mean, I'd say Tuberville days especially, you had a lot of wild offensive coordinator situations through there, and him being kind of the defensive guy and how he handled those. We're sort of back to that again, but with a lot more coverage than we had back in the early and then I guess the late 2000s. Of both times it was sort of a major turnover. So this is something that fans are disgruntled with, but I don't think a situation this chaotic is something that they're quite used to, because this one is definitely a very unique one, all things considered, and it's definitely going to leave a lot of people with a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's an odd one. So you'll have, we talked about the five coordinators, and then obviously you go Nick Eason to Jimmy Brumball. You hire Christian Robinson to replace Schmedding at linebackers, and so it's just a lot's going on. I understand. Look, I get the red flags. I understand why fans are where they are in terms of Brian Harsin. There's a certain fan base that's saying it is not going to work. I've already seen enough. There's a certain fan base that's probably, hey, I've seen a lot, but let's just wait another year. They're kind of all over the map, and I get everybody's stance on that. If you came to me and said, hey, he's not going to work, too many red flags, I'm already telling you, it'd be hard for me to debate you. I mean, that's certainly your thought, and it'd be hard for me to tell you you're wrong. There have been a lot of red flags, whether it's the coaching, the coaching staff shakeup, Bo Nix transferring, just stuff that you're like, maybe there's different degrees of how much it's Harsin's fault or not fault or whatever. But just when that many things kind of happen at the same time in a program, it just makes you wonder. And so the Austin Davis is just kind of another one. It's just another one. I do think I'm just trying to keep some perspective on this. I've long said, look, we need to give Harsin time. You need to give him, you got to give a guy time to set his culture and build a program. I'm really trying not to make a lot of judgments on him until, at the minimum, after next recruiting class. See him another spring, see another fall, see another recruiting class. I mean, I got thoughts right now, but I wouldn't say they're concrete just because there's a lot going on. Let's at least see 2 years. My gosh. I mean, we live in a world now where you're going to see 1 year, and I get there's been some crazy things happen, but just keep in mind this team was 6-2 and number 12 in the country. I mean, that's how quickly now it's going the other direction. I mean, so I would ask everybody that's waving the red flags, what was your thought when Auburn beat Ole Miss and was 6-2? What were your thoughts? And so then obviously they collapse and lose second halves and lose games, and then Mason leaves, and and there's been things that have made you now wonder, but it's it's not like the season was a disaster from the get-go. They could have beaten Penn State. Like there was things that it could have gone the other direction. So I just say let's wait another year and sort of see. I also think, man, there's just what Brian Harsin's trying to do in the time he's trying to do it, man, there's a lot going on. Imagine going from Boise State to Auburn and making that transition just alone. Head coach from Boise State to Auburn in the SEC in the midst of what's going on with Bama and Georgia and A&M. That's a hard enough challenge in and of itself. Then you throw on the fact that he's trying to completely change the culture. He's not just coming in and saying, well, let's just kind of keep this thing rolling. It's not what's happening. He's changing the culture to fit what he expects from the players and the coaches. So you have that. He could be going to any conference. You have the level of competition is raised, and he's also now trying to change the culture dramatically. Okay, then throw in the immediate real rise and impact of the transfer portal and NIL. So now in the midst of all this, you're trying to now also figure out how do we manage the portal? How do we build up our staff to figure out who's coming in at the rate they're coming in and who we can go after? How do we evaluate our own players? And then NIL. Now you're trying to recruit. How do we use NIL? Can we use it? What's the infrastructure around that? There is a ton going on all at the same time for Brian Harsin coming into a new program and trying to build the program, build the culture, figure out NIL, figure out the transfer portal, keep players happy or don't. You move on. It just it's just been a year of kind of really tough timing for a coach to come into a place like Auburn in the SEC and do all that with all the outside stuff going on as well. If you're a program that's already established, then all you're doing is adjusting to the portal and the NIL. And you've known that's been coming for a few years, so you've had time to adjust. And so I think what he's come into is just sort of everything at once. And it's caused a lot of friction and a lot of bumps. And the bottom line with Harsin is, man, is he tough to coach with? Is he tough to deal with? Probably, depending on your personality. I mean, I've kind of said this for a while. You're either going to mesh with him or you're not, from what I understand. I mean, he's kind of black and white with him. And I think the players that sort of are more wired that way probably love him. Black and white, win or don't, in or out. And the coaches the same way. I think you've seen, so Burt Watts or Eric Kiesau or Jeff Schmedding, those guys know what he's about at Boise. Hadn't been any issues there. The issues have been with Cornelius Williams or Derek Mason or Mike Bobo, or the guys that don't know how he operates. And there's been friction. So again, it's not, to me, that's not right or wrong. It's just either going to work or it doesn't. I don't mind a guy coming in and saying, this is my culture, these are my expectations, and this is what we're doing, period. It's just going to work or not. And if it doesn't, then you can make judgments and say what you did was wrong or right. And I think fans are the same way. I don't think fans care that he butts heads with Derek Mason or butts heads with Mike Bobo. If he wins, I don't think they care. Do it your way. And that's what he's trying to do. Is it a red flag that there's been a few coaches that he's butting heads with like that? Again, maybe not. I mean, we're not in the ins and outs of all that. I mean, it's hard to say one coach is wrong and one coach is right if there's friction there. Again, I think there's just a way of doing things for Brian Harsin, and if it goes the other way, and if that's just not for you, then it's not for you. Is he tough to deal with? Those kind of things. I guess maybe, but the guys at Boise seem to love him and understand him, whether it's Schmedding or Burt Watts and Eric Kiesau, and so they believe in him. They believe in what he's doing. So I'm not saying they're right, Derek Mason's wrong. I'm just saying there are coaches and there are guys that look, Austin Davis made the decision to leave the NFL and come. Now he changed his mind when he got into, I think, the demands and the recruiting and flying to California and back. But he seemed to believe in Harsin's vision to make the initial decision that he did. Even last year, Tracy Rocker was going to come on board before the NFL came back and got him another job. So it's not like he hasn't had people that have understood or seen his vision, in that regard. So I just think there's a lot of stuff going on that probably just take a step back. And if you want to be on board that you've already made up your mind, so be it. It's fine. I just think there's been a lot of stuff going on and a lot of friction that needs to get itself get itself worked out before we make kind of long-lasting judgments on Brian Harsin. But the bottom line is, it's been a rocky start. Period. It's been a rocky start, and so I understand where Auburn fans are at.
Well, it's a patience thing, and fans have this. Well, I've been patient. I'm sick of being patient without kind of. I always use the example of what happened with Tennessee for a long time there, and it's just if you just get a little too trigger happy with just constantly trying to empty, refill, and pour the pot in this constant, never-ending cycle, you just get stuck in this slump and kind of become an embarrassment. So I think it is no secret that Gus Malzahn's personality and culture and Brian Harsin's are, from the outside in, seem fairly different. I think there was a play, I cannot remember where it was with, but I think there was a player interview that even one former player was like, "Oh no, they're a lot alike," and didn't elaborate on that too much. But I would have been like very curious to hear how that would have been down, and who knows, that could have just been like they both love football a lot, but seemingly from the culture, do what?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to hit on that, I mean, just yeah, they're similar. They're similar in that I would say they're ball coaches, X's and
Mhm.
O's. They love X's and O's. They draw it up on a napkin type of deal. I would say they're similar in trying to be detail oriented and kind of almost paranoid ish in in how they approach it. But it's just, but then the personalities, though, beyond that, deep down, are then just different. I mean, Harsin um, he's very, very idealistic. I think Malzahn's a little different. I think Malzahn gave a little bit more space for players and coaches to sort of be them, whereas I think Harsin is like, this is how you're going to be. This is how we're going to be. This is how we're going to act. This is how we're going to approach film in the film room. This is how we're going to do it. And I think Malzahn maybe gave a little bit more room for guys to sort of be them, be their personality. And again, right, wrong. I mean, look at Bruce Pearl gives his guys a lot of leeway. But he wins, and those guys know when to turn it on. They know when to focus and all that stuff. There's a lot of inconsistency with Malzahn's program, wins and
Right.
losses, and so there's not a right or wrong way. It's just either going to work or it's not. And so I think in terms of ball coach X and O, I think Harsin and Malzahn are similar that way. But in terms of their personality and how they approach what they expect and what they let slide and not let slide, it very different. Harsin's like, here's the expectations, here's the standards, period. No room for you're going to be on the front row, and if you're not, I'm disappointed. You're going to be early. You're going to be wearing a suit in Tiger Walk, on and on. And so I think those are some. I think that's the shift that you've seen where some players have adjusted, tougher workouts or tougher whatever. Some players like that and are cool with that. Derek Hall or Colby Wooden, and you see those guys adjust and say absolutely, and then you've seen some other guys go, yeah, that's a little too much for me. And
And I think it's kind of fair to understand some of the similarities and some of those differences to kind of get an idea of why things may be the way they are. Because if you really look at it, I mean, Gus Malzahn was under Chiswick.
Mhm.
That was the extension between the two of those administrations. There was a lot of similarities in how they were. Because I mean, you think about it, I mean, that's where Gus Malzahn was learning as coach. I mean, was it Houston Nutt, Gene Chiswick? So from there, as far as the change, Harsin being just a complete outsider, totally different than what had already sort of been a precedent that had already been there. Because a lot of people would really make the arguments of the embers were still pretty warm from when Gus Malzahn left as a coordinator for a year and then came back as a coach. I mean, there was still a lot of similarities. Players knew him, his guys, his systems. So if you really think from 09 until this 2020 versus what Harsin is doing versus what was already there, a lot of differences that people just are not used to. Then, as you mentioned, factor in everything with NIL, the internet, just a new generation of guys, just the culture of football, the money behind football and sports. It is just a huge, I guess, it's a growing pains for lack of better words here. And I think it's just sort of understanding the big picture plan and what that looks like. And I know you've been saying it too, just like we have to wait. And I'm a big guy too, where I understand, like, I see what Harsin's trying to do for that to work. If we do not give him the time, and I'm actually a pretty big, like, I want to give him the patience. I want to give him the time. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt for this thing, because I think we can see what's happening. I think fans are just getting way too trigger happy with, like, this is it. We've had enough. We need to call Hugh Freeze. We need to write Lane Kiffin a blank check, and just throwing out all these ridiculous names that really have no merit. And I just think that's sort of a toxic move for the base. I think it is just silly at this point to even try to entertain those type of deals, because where outside of just the figment of imagination, where do we really think letting him go? I mean, I would have to say this season, unless it was just an utter disaster, everything went wrong that could have gone wrong, you've got to give him that time to get his systems in place and do it. I know that stinks and it may not be what we wanted, but everybody who knew this stuff coming in straight up said, this is not a short-term fix. This is a 3 to 5 year plan to get it right, rebuild it from the ground up. And I know we've said this in nauseum, but it seems like every time something bad happens, we have to go through here and repeat the same things that we've said over and over again, because people start freaking out like, oh no, nothing is going perfect. Like, that is the nature of the beast. Look at Nick Saban his first year. His defensive coordinator was Kevin Steele and he had Major Applewhite. They're long gone. Alabama did just fine in the long run. So it is not uncommon for first year coaches to have some first year head coaches have some turnover within their staff. It's happened. It's survivable. Now, I think Auburn's situation is a little wilder than that. I think it looks like it's just a matter of what's going to happen. But as you were kind of mentioning with the season, if Bo Nix doesn't get hurt and we have a few little injuries that don't happen, and let's just say, well, I'll even say you still keep the Mississippi State loss, surely you're going to beat South Carolina. It's hard to argue to think that you don't beat Alabama, or hard to think that you don't lose to Alabama if you got a healthy Bo Nix in there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you win those two games, you win the SEC West. Am I right? Because even with the Mississippi State loss, didn't the dominoes align right to where they still could have won it because Ole Miss beat A&M?
Gosh, man, I don't know. I feel like they still, well, if you beat Alabama and only have a Mississippi State, Bama, possibly.
Yeah, because I think that was what it was.
Yeah.
This weird scenario, even after Mississippi State, because it was like if we'd beaten South Carolina, like we still could have controlled our own destiny. It's just a weird sort of deal. So let's just say that was a scenario. And you're not going to say we beat Houston, because if you've been to those other teams, you're not playing Houston in the bowl game. But that one little scenario of Bo Nix getting hurt could have just completely changed the outlook of the season, the attitude of everything. And just one, I'm kind of getting back to what I mentioned earlier with Harsin, is like, maybe, and I don't want this to sound like a cop-out type of response to it, but could it legitimately just be like he's just having some terrible, terrible luck? Now, is his leadership supposed to mitigate that and, hey, do things where you control your own destiny a little bit better? Well, that can be argued all day long. But is that too much of a stretch to say that maybe he's just been really unlucky with a lot of things?
I maybe some things. I mean, I don't think, Mike Bobo and Derek Mason aren't luck. Those are fit issues that he hired them. I think there was decent reason to hire them. They had SEC experience. They had some success in the past. Bobo seemed to fit in terms of a pro-ish style, not pro style, but little under center, stuff like that. Derek Mason is, so to me, those were guys that he hired. He brought on, had SEC experience. It didn't work out. Fit wise, they weren't good. They weren't good fits. Friction happened. I don't think those are bad luck. That's just, that's on him. The Austin Davis thing sort of falls into that category. Like, I'm not sure what he was supposed to do there. Bo Nix getting injured, not sure what he's supposed to do there. And so, yeah. But then the second half collapses. Yeah, that's coaching. So I think it's just been a combination of stuff, and it really started early. I mean, even go back to the way the media treated him about COVID, and we're not going to get into that, but just the way the media portrayed him, and I think a lot of Auburn fans defended him, but it just sort of created drama and controversy around his program, and you could have even been on his side. But I think in the back of your mind, you're still thinking drama, controversy. And I think it was almost like it got off to a rocky start because of that. And then it went from there. So firing the receivers coach, that's not lucky. That's 100% Harsin's decision to pull the plug and make that change 4 games in. So I think there's been a combination of stuff that, stuff he can control and stuff he absolutely can control.
Well, I feel like kind of giving the momentum of things, and tell me if this is kind of a good synopsis of this, like a way to kind of sum up the coaching drama, the saga of him thus far, it seems like it's very much been a 3 steps forward, 5 steps back type of situation. You
Yeah.
get these mid-season, or you start a few good games, then oh well, Georgia State. All right, we're on a good roll. Up injuries, the Mississippi, and just the worst November ever. And you have some good momentum with some really good recruiting stuff. All right, you lose to Houston. Okay, you get some other good recruiting news, and then Derek Mason leaves, and then the Austin, just everything else has happened in the last 2.5 weeks. So I guess one thing that I'm seeing with this is just the lack of consistency, of just
Yeah.
smoothness, no choppy waters. And that's just what it feels like, is the second we get some smooth sailing, like, okay, everything, not everything has to be great. Just
Yeah.
it is stable. Nothing bad is happening. We're just doing what we need to do. Oh, rug keeps getting ripped out from under us. We're back in the middle of a hurricane again. And that just seems like what this is. And I know kind of what we were saying here is like how much was in his control, how much isn't. But at the end of the day, he is the leader. And unfortunately, when you're in a leadership position of anything, you're still the fall guy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be his fault, even if it's not really his fault. So I think the pressure's on him. And I guess with actual signing day coming up here soon, what is there a realistic situation to turn this around? Because I think there's a lot of people here who are just waving the warning flags of like, hey, we need to jump ship. And I think there's a other side of the fan base that's a little bit more level headed. That's like, guys, this isn't a big deal. Like, we're going to be okay. So where do you really fall into that? How should we feel? What do you think, pending some other news doesn't come out that completely turns this opinion on its backside? But what do you think can realistically happen to kind of steer this ship right?
Um, win football games. I mean, that's why I'm kind of waiting to see. I get where everybody's at right now, and I don't disagree. But in terms of saying it'll never work or whatever, I'm just going to wait and see. Um, I think they learned a lot in terms of how to recruit, what it's going to take. They hired additional staff in the recruiting offices in terms of player evaluation, both on the high school level and the transfer portal, so that they understood, hey, we need more people, we need more help. So they're building up, beefing up the infrastructure there. And so, and then let's just see. You got a couple of new coaches on board. Let's see if they can find a quarterback, and let's go from there. I think that's the issue. Is early on, it looks like you have a Harsin, you have a head coach that believes potentially. I don't know I don't know the direct answer. Maybe we can ask him, but I mean, he'll probably give a PC answer to the media. But it certainly seems like he believes more in executing on the football field, X's and O's. That's how we win. Than go get the best players humanly possible. I think so. Again, that's fine, but in the SEC, with the talent that's in this league, you better be getting some studs, or you better be far and away a better X's and O's coach to make up that gap. And I'm going to tell you, like, there's some really good coaches in the league. That would be pretty arrogant to think you're the best X's and O's coach and you can scheme people. You can just out scheme people, even if you have lesser talent. And so I think that's the early on kind of the hesitancy or the cautious sort of attitude that people are taking is recruiting. You got some good players. What I wouldn't say it was awesome. And then now on this signing day, it looks like you're going to lose out on some of the main guys you're going after on this kind of last signing day. So I think that's where you're at, and that's where the additional infrastructure on the recruiting side and the evaluation side. Let's see how that plays out, and if that can help Auburn see more guys, evaluate guys, recruit better, maybe get into the portal and make better evaluations, stuff like that. It seems like you've seen a lot of programs land a big time portal guy, whether it's Ole Miss and Jackson Dart, or Arkansas with a few of theirs, and you're like, how's Auburn missed out on some of the high profile guys maybe they were going after? Now, to be fair, on the offensive line, all the guys came back. So if you wanted Mason Brooks, who I think went to Ole Miss, all of Auburn's offensive linemen decided to return. That's tough to go get a transfer guy that wants to play right away. So again, there's stuff going on there. But I think early on, that's probably my biggest hesitation is how much does he care about recruiting and understand how big recruiting is? Not just, yeah, I know we got to get good players. No. You got to get the best players you can get, even if it's on the line of, do they fit my culture? Maybe not, but man, they're talented. And so I think that's where Malzahn, he got the talent. He just couldn't scheme it up. And so I think right now it's, Harsin's going to have to match his importance of recruiting to his importance of what he thinks scheming and X and O's is. Or, if you just want to get guys that fit your culture, that fit, that's super important. It's super important. But at some point, you're the head coach, and you got to bring a guy in that's super talented and make him buy in. Not just go get a high school senior that already sort of thinks that way and is lesser talented, if that makes sense. I think that's sort of where I'm like, can he stay at the top echelon in the SEC, sort of doing it that way?
I got a curveball question for you. I don't know if you thought of this. Surely you have, but you might not. And this is a total opinion. Do you think Auburn should just promote Keysau and be done with it, or go out and try to find another guy?
Oh.
Yeah, tough one. Curveball.
I mean, at this stage, here's the deal. Brian Harsin was already going to be super involved in play calling with Austin Davis. I mean, I had heard that Harsin was already saying, I'm going to call the plays on game day. And you're bringing, Austin Davis had no college experience as an OC. From that view, it's almost like nothing happened. Austin Davis was barely here. He barely recruited anybody. There's no long-term connections with future recruits. So like in that regard, and I think Harsin was already going to be a massive part of play calling. So just in terms of that, you're not a lot's going to change. It's more just the perception of what in the world's going on. But if Harsin's going to be that involved in potentially calling plays, why not just promote Eric Keysau? Now, the other aspect of that is the way Harsin is sort of approaching this whole thing. If his staff isn't bought into what he wants to do, it's not going to work anyway. So I don't know, like might as well just promote Keysau, go hire a quarterback coach, because Harsin can't be the quarterback coach during practice. He's got to pay attention to more things. But go hire a quarterback coach, and then you would have then your offensive and defensive coordinators would be guys you brought from Boise. At that point, it's on you. Their expectations, everybody's aligned there. Everybody knows what you're about. Expectations are aligned. Let's see what happens then.
Okay, let me.
That would be is promote Keysau. Unless I just don't know what's out there in terms of who's out there that you're just that would just blow up the world. You go hire some OC that college, like NFL. I mean, I just don't know what you do. To me, it's almost more important for Harsin to keep that culture and expectations. Promote Keysau, hire a quarterback coach, and make no more excuses and go build your culture.
No, so I'm with you there. So let me ask this, taking that curveball and then throwing another one. Let's just say, keep that scenario. You do that with him. So basically you have got your guys in your spots. It is 100% all him. If that happens and Auburn has another just bland season, maybe we'll just say 6-6 versus maybe a similar season, but it's all outside guys. It's none of the Boise guys. It's just more people they brought in that had good pedigrees, just stuff didn't really churn out. Do you think that one scenario with the same record would yield him another year of coaching, or do you think it would be, hey, you're out either way? Like, do you think if he had some scapegoats, would that potentially give him more time? Or is this like going all in with the chips? Like, hey, these are your guys. There's no excuses if this doesn't work. It's on you.
I mean, I could see a scenario where he promotes Keysau, Jeff Schmedding. So they go through a season where his guys are the coordinators. Let's say they go 7-5. I think he could make the argument and say, hold on, the first year was bumpy. Guys didn't fit what I wanted them to be. We butted heads. I had to make changes. We've only had a year of kind of instilling my culture again, having my guys coordinating. I've only had 1 year of doing that. I think we're making progress. I think you could make that case to go like moving forward. Like, yeah, you're right. There's been some changes, and let's see what happens in that year. If you don't hear a lot about internal strife, players, coaches, and the season happens, you can maybe make that case. But if it goes really poorly, like 6-6, and you hear about issues again, and there's underlying stuff that then I think you have a massive decision, because then you have, okay, he put his Boise guys in charge, and we still heard about internal strife, and they still went 6-6, and it still seemed rocky and inconsistent. And then I think you'd have a problem. I think the best case for him is to put his guys into place and have a year where it seems like everybody's bought in, the culture's good. You hear positive. I mean, the people in the administration know better than we do. They know kind of the vibe of the culture. If that seems to get better next year, then you can maybe point to things going in a better direction. It's just crazy that we're talking about 2 years in, after everything I described about what he's got to deal with coming in and trying to build this, and then going, well, that's 2 years. Do they just, it's just, that is wild to me, regardless of all the red flags. It's just, if that's the new mentality of college football, if the new mentality is a year or 2 years in, just deciding that you've seen enough, move on, then I don't know what we're doing. I mean, to me, you just set a precedent that is good luck going and hiring somebody else, by the way, if you do that. Who in the world would want to watch Gus Malzahn be fairly successful, right? Never had a losing season. He gets fired. Okay.
On a COVID year of all things, too.
With no
spring practice.
I think there's a lot of reasons to let him go, but a head coach is going to go, God, he had a lot of success. Then you hire Brian Harsin, you give him 2 years, and you fire him. Who are you going to go get? Good luck. I mean, I almost think you got to give Brian Harsin 3 years, because you cannot fire him after 2 and then go get a head coach. Nobody's coming into that situation. Nobody wants a part of that. Whoa, these guys are wild. I mean, there's no room for error. They want me to come in and go nine wins immediately, or I'm on the hot seat. Like, I just think you set a really, really bad precedent if you seriously consider firing him after 2 years.
I think one thing that would be I don't think this would be a hot take at all. And if it is, blast me for it. But it seems like Harsin is not checked out. It seems like he cares. It seems like he is invested in Auburn and wants to grow and be a part of the culture. And what I'm comparing this to is Chad Morris. And we talked to, when we had some spaces, we chatted, and of course, over the years with these Arkansas people about their very much disdain for him. And that was kind of the common denominator with him when he's Arkansas's head coach, was he was so checked out. He never cared. He didn't want a part of the culture. He didn't want to be here, yada, 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 yada. Now, I don't follow Arkansas like that, so I cannot state that with my own opinion or observations, but that is what numerous Arkansas fans and Arkansas media people have all said pretty much across the board. And naturally, that we saw how that happened with them. I don't get those vibes from Harsin, though. I feel like despite a lot of the setbacks, despite the things, he seems to be very present. He seems to be very eager, and he seems to be pushing on. And I think there's got to be something said for that, to where if we did notice there were some checkout issues or disinterest or things like that, that to me would probably be the ultimate red flag. But I don't, am I wrong there? Do you feel like he's checked out?
No.
Okay. I don't think so.
He's, like I said, I think the recruiting is what they got to figure out, the importance of it. Harsin needs to be on the trail probably a little bit more, but I think that's the big thing, is how do they elevate recruiting and making Auburn an attractive place for high school, NIL, transfer portal. That's got to step up. But no, I think what you have is you have a coach in Brian Harsin who is very idealistic, very principled, and very straightforward in a lot of those ways. Here's how we're going to do it. Period. And I don't think he cares what you think. He doesn't care what the fans think. He doesn't care what the media thinks. He just doesn't care. And you might be like, well, he should care. I hear you. Like he should, they shouldn't be in a complete bubble. They should understand maybe a little bit of expectations and things like that. But if you're coming in trying to set the culture, like Brian Harsin is, and you're trying to say, this is how we're going to do things, there's really, I mean, he kind of has to say, I just don't care what the media says. I don't care what the fans think about, I don't care. I'm gonna have to insulate myself, and I'm gonna do it my way. and I can't be distracted. And I think that's how he is. And so I think there's a little bit of disconnect there sometimes when you talk, when we talk to him in the media. Or, I think there's a little bit of disconnect there where you're like, what's going on? And I don't think there's a good connection yet with Harsin and the Auburn people because it's only been a year and it's been rocky. And I think sometimes Harsin has an opportunity to talk through the media and he doesn't always take advantage. I think he's just like, yeah, this is what we're doing, like it or not. And,
Well, I think the
and so
basketball
just,
appearances have been good.
yeah, those have been good. And, yeah, I mean, look at him. He goes and hands out stuff to the students and he gets cheered and you're like, God, this guy. So there's just, I think, a little bit of disconnect between fans and Harsin and expectations and getting to know him and understanding him and what he's all about. He probably should do a little bit better job of that. I think there's an opportunity for him to be a little bit more open about that. And there's times in the media where he's like, he just kind of answers the questions like, of course, like, let's just, it's almost a dumb question. Like, of course we're going to do X, Y, Z, or wow, that's football. I mean, I don't understand, and I think maybe connecting to people a little bit better in terms of building his culture and opening up about, hey, when you're trying to do this, there's going to be friction, and I don't know, just opening up about some of that might help. But no, he's just, here's how he's going to do it. And it's either going to work or it doesn't. And they just don't care about outside noise. I mean, I think one of the things I've heard about is the Austin Davis deal is that's been going on. And Harsin's just been like, I'll deal with it on whatever. Like, so it's Monday and they could have released this Sunday, Saturday, probably even last week. I think that they probably could have, this probably was done. And he was like, no, I'm gonna deal with it after the weekend. Rumors were going crazy, right? Like all this stuff, none of that mattered. He was gonna deal with recruiting, deal with the junior day, and he'll deal with it on Monday. And just the rumors kind of, so that's just his way of, I'm doing it my way. Y'all can do whatever you want on the outside, but here's how we're gonna operate. So I don't know. I'm trying to let you in on a little bit of kind of just how I think he is, and he did, but ultimately win ball games. That's it. Win ball games, be consistent, and fans will jump back on your side, man. Beat Penn State. Go beat Penn State early in the year and see what happens.
Yeah, going back to what I was saying at the very beginning, kind of comparing the personality quirks to Malzahn and Harsin, I think that's important for a lot of folks to understand, to kind of just get what's going on, get why it's going on, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Now, one of the last points on this is with the Boise guys. We're kind of talking about them and their roles with Schmedding and potentially, let's just say hypothetically, Keith Allen, and with Darren Usher up there in recruiting. I think it's pretty safe to say that it seems like his guys, as far as, practice, running games, culture, respect the players, et cetera, for guys that are buying in. I mean, that there really hadn't been any hiccups with that. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people are still kind of scratching their head and critiquing on is just the recruiting, and especially kind of the lop side of it. I mean, it seems defensively it's been doing very well. And outside of just, I think now what do we have, 3 quarterback transfers with starting with TJ, then Ashford and Calzada, but there really hasn't been a whole lot of other big moves with either transfers or high school or JUCO guys on the offensive side. So that definitely is kind of the big head scratcher there. And that seems to be the biggest critique with a lot of the Boise guys. Of course, we know in the modern age of football is probably just the most important thing that there is out there is how or why or can these guys recruit? Should we even put them in these positions if they've just really shown over the last year that this is not their strong suit? Is there a way to sort of calm that mind of thinking, or just sort of pivot what some folks might think? Or is that still like that's a problem and we just have no idea how that's going to pan out with these guys?
I'm not sure how it's going to pan out. I mean, we're going to find out. Culture over anything else. I mean, we're going to find out. Like, is it more important that you have a staff that is just lockstep, or is it more important that you can get the best coaches and coordinators you can get? They got to buy in. Maybe there's friction at times, but we all are trying to win, and you manage that and you win. Versus, I don't want to deal with any people stepping out. I want everybody. I don't want to deal with it. I know what he's about. I know what he's about. We trust each other. It's all good. You're just about to find out, I think, on terms of that culture versus, I mean, you can't build a staff for years and years and years and just always have guys that you've just been with the whole time. It just doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
And so that's fine this year. If you're building it, okay, I can understand maybe trying to build it, man. But at some point, we're going to have to see Harsin go hire 2 coordinators that have not been with him in the past and that roll with him. They work well together and they win football games. And that's been 1 year, right? And I haven't had a lot of opportunities. 1 year didn't go well. You had 2 coordinators who you butted heads with both of them, and they're both gone. And Mason Bobo and Mason Bobo and Harsin are not buddies. Okay, they're not. They didn't leave on great terms. Bobo's not out there going, man, it just wasn't for me. But man, Harsin's a great guy. Mason, none of that's happening. So we'll try this again and see if he can bring guys in that, at some point, bring in some coordinators that they can work together and win football games.
Right. And I guess it was last week, I believe, that Harsin was bopping around visiting some high schools across the state. I think infamously the picture of him and Pat Nix. I know I saw him. I think he was at Spain Park High School as well as a few others getting some handshakes out there, getting boots on the ground at these high schools. And it's been very well documented and known for a while for folks who follow recruiting that this next up and coming class of 2023, as far as high school players in Alabama, is just absolutely elite comparative to the talent pool size compared to how it normally is for a state the size of Alabama. And it's no secret that Gus Malzahn didn't win a lot of the in-state battles, at least in the state of Alabama, as many as he should have. It seems like Harsin is putting a little bit extra emphasis on this. How important is it to start getting some guys in that big class in state? Because 2023 will be his class from top to bottom, pretty much, as far as his involvement with recruiting them. How is that outlook looking?
Yeah,
too
early to tell, but I haven't heard any indication that he's treating in-state any more important than he did before. I've heard there's a couple kids in state that are big-time players that have already openly said other schools out of state are recruiting them harder than Auburn is right now, and even a couple guys that didn't come to junior day because they weren't sure. Like Auburn just wasn't really on them a lot at the moment.
Yeah, and do we not see that as a potential problem for losing the guys in our own backyard?
It's a potential problem when you're a top 100 type player in state. And you're like, that I think is just, what are you doing if you're Auburn? Are you saying, well, we haven't properly evaluated? It doesn't matter. He's in state. Show him a bunch of love now. Figure it out later. You don't want early on him going, they're not showing me a lot of love yet. Oh, well, we're still trying to evaluate players. I'm top 100 in state. I'm pretty good. Maybe show me love now and then figure out later maybe he's not quite the fit, and then turn the interest down there. So no, long way to go in terms of recruiting and what we think about this staff and if they can land the type of players consistently across the board, not one here, that one there, like a step up in some guys. Because you're going to look back at this class and go, between portal and high school, they missed a bunch. Like they're going to miss a bunch of guys, and you're going to go, God, they lost him to Ole Miss, and they lost him to Florida. They lost him to here. They lost him to here. And that kind of puts you in your place a little bit.
Because obviously with Cristobal coming down to Miami, Auburn had done pretty well over the number of recent past years of doing pretty well in South Florida. Well, Cristobal being back and what he has done and is doing with recruiting, well, there goes a hotbed of recruiting just right there. Schools like Florida State, Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, are going to be looking up here. So that to me is just a scary point to see, like, if these guys aren't going to get that, it could be really rocky waters. Because I think if the season is okay, but we are just pushing a lot of momentum in recruiting for 2023, I think that could get, I think if you have a 7-5 season with a really promising recruiting class, I think fans could really get behind that. Sure. And this is me opinion. I think if you do not have that high recruiting class, you just got some Rockies, or you've got guys who decommit and flip to rivals and just stuff like that. That's where I really think that the waters could get so choppy to where you might have seeing a lot of people just completely jump ship. Because look at what Bruce did with Atlanta. He was and where George is in basketball now, because Athens couldn't land guys in their backyard. Bruce is getting George's just players of the year, here with what he did with the Coro, and then what he ended up getting with Walker, Sharif, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And that's what other schools other out-of-state schools that are in the Southeast are going to want to do with Alabama if they notice there's talent here. And you've got Georgia, you've got Alabama, these juggernauts in your backyard. What Lane Kiffin's doing at Ole Miss, and who knows what's going to end up happening with LSU, and then even some of the momentum Florida State's getting. I mean, Auburn is in the middle of a hotbed of competition. And as you mentioned earlier, it is a little arrogant to think that, oh, well, we don't have the best guys. We've got some really good guys, but we can out scheme X's and O's, these literal best coaches in the nation. I'm with you there. I'm not necessarily convinced that that's going to be the way to win ball games either.
No.
And obviously X's and O's is important, but at the end of the day, it's like you're going up against the best and the best. They're not considered the best because they get out schemed by other guys. So
yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. I think the recruiting is a big part of it, though. Start to see some progress being made there and feel like things are going in the right direction, and that'll be a good start, because you can't win a game until the fall. But some good things could happen recruiting-wise before then. You could get good news. You could get some early commits. You could have some recruiting wins between now and in the summer that would make fans say, okay, feels like things have ticked it up a notch. And so that's going to be massively important. All right, let's roll. I'm about to go talk to Bruce Pearl, the number one team in the country in the AP poll again. And they just moved up to number one in the coaches poll. They're actually tied with Gonzaga. The coaches just can't put Auburn number one. They just can't do it. But they're tied with Gonzaga, the exact same number of first place votes. But regardless, for the first time ever now, it's now number one Auburn in both polls. So we're going to go talk to Bruce as they get ready for Alabama. Woo!
Big game. Exciting stuff.
Yeah,
and we didn't even get to all the basketball news in the last week.
Well,
that's a whole nother.
Look, basketball's just doing their thing. They're number one.
I know.
What do you want?
We've got plenty of time for all that.
Yeah, they're number one. They're winning games, man. They're doing their thing. All right, man. Appreciate you joining us. We'll catch up next week and see if things have chilled out on the football front, and see if we're talking about rivalry week. That's hard to say. Bama and Georgia this week. Auburn can sweep those two teams for the first time since 1819, the same season they went to the Final Four. So big week for Auburn in basketball. All right, dude. Appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. As I always happy to be here. War Eagle.
Yep. We'll see everybody. AuburnLive.com. Go subscribe. 50% off right now for probably a week or so, and then it'll be done. So AuburnLive.com. Appreciate it. We'll see y'all later.
See you guys. Thank y'all.